They said it was just another traffic stop. They said the officer had reasonable suspicion. They said the girl was non-compliant. But no one mentioned the dog. No one mentioned the growl, deep, low, and steady, just seconds before the scream. No one ever talks about the dog who refused to stay silent. It started on a quiet Thursday afternoon in the suburbs of Denton, Texas. 14-year-old Ava Johnson was walking home from her math tutoring session, earbuds in, backpack slung low, and a soft drink sweating through the plastic bag in her hand. The sun was still high and the street was mostly empty, except for a few parked cars and the occasional sprinkler misting someone's freshly cut lawn. Walking beside her, connected by a thick leash, was Juno, her German shepherd, emotional, support-certified canine trained by her late father, a former military police officer who passed away 2 years earlier. Juno wasn't just a pet, she was Ava's protector, her shadow, her confidence when the world felt unsafe. That day the world would prove just how unsafe it could be. As Ava passed the old sycamore near Oak Ridge and Elm, she spotted the police SUV pull out from behind the bank. It rolled slowly up the street, windows tinted, silent. Ava turned down her music, uneasy. The car crept alongside her and stopped. The driver's window slid down. "Hey there," the officer said. White male, late 40s, buzz cut, sunglasses. "You live around here?" Ava nodded politely. "Yes, sir. Just heading home." "What's your address?" Ava blinked. "I don't think I need to give you that, sir." The officer's expression stiffened. "You match a description. I need to confirm who you are." Ava took a step back. "Can I ask what description?" He opened the door and stepped out. "Show me your ID." "I'm only 14, she replied. "I'm not carrying ID." "Then we've got a problem." Juno, who had been calm up to that point, stepped in front of Ava and stood stiffly, ears perked. The officer eyed the dog. "You better control that thing." "She's trained," Ava said. "My dad was K-9 unit." "I don't care if your dad was the president. Put the dog in the sit position now." Ava hesitated. Juno didn't move. There was something in the air, a feeling, like static just before a storm, and then the officer reached for her arm. "Now's a good time to hit pause, and if you believe animals can sense what we sometimes can't, make sure to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. Every week, we tell real and inspired stories about canines and heroic animals who do more than just protect. They choose who they protect. And sometimes, they choose right." Back to the story. "Stop!" Ava yelled, twisting out of his grip. He grabbed harder. "That's when," Juno growled, not loud, but deep, resonant, like a warning bell ringing in the gut. The officer pulled his taser. Ava gasped. "Please, she's not going to hurt you." He aimed, not at her, not at the dog, but toward the ground in front of them. "I said get control of that dog." Juno took one step forward. Ava shouted, "Down, Juno!" But she didn't obey. The officer stepped in closer, too close, and then it happened. He shoved Ava backward, hard enough for her to hit the sidewalk with a dull thud and cry out in pain. And Juno launched. She didn't go for the throat. She didn't maul. She bit the officer's forearm, just enough to pull him away. The man screamed, fell, kicked at her with his boot. "Get this thing off me." Ava scrambled up. "Juno, release." "Release!" Juno obeyed instantly and returned to Ava's side. Sirens were already echoing in the distance. Neighbors had come out of their homes. Someone was filming. But Ava didn't notice any of that. She just wrapped her arms around Juno and whispered, "It's okay, girl, you did good. You did exactly what Dad taught you." 10 minutes later, Ava was in the back of a squad car, separated from Juno. The officer she'd bitten was being treated by paramedics. His arm was bleeding, but he wasn't seriously injured. But what came next would change everything. He accused her of assault. He claimed Juno attacked without cause. He said Ava instigated a confrontation, and because he wore the badge, people believed him. Juno was taken by animal control, tagged for aggression review. Ava's mother wasn't allowed to see her for 6 hours. And the footage? The officer's body cam had mysteriously malfunctioned. Ava sat in a juvenile processing room shaking, eyes swollen from crying, holding on to the only thing she had left, her father's canine patch. She had done nothing wrong, but she was black, and the officer wasn't. By the next day, everything had changed. The officer was back on duty. Ava was suspended from school pending investigation, and Juno was scheduled to be evaluated for possible euthanasia. But then, something surfaced. A bystander video. Not the whole event, just the middle. Just enough to show Ava being shoved. Enough to show the dog stepping in. And just like that, the tide shifted. People online were furious. News anchors asked, "Did this canine dog know something the officer ignored?" But Ava still hadn't told her full story. And there was still something. No one else knew. Something about Juno. About how she was trained, not just to obey, but to judge. To act not just on command, but on principle. Because her father had taught her that, sometimes. Justice has to come with teeth. They say the truth always finds a way to come out. But sometimes it bleeds its way through clenched teeth, barked orders, and stitched-up wounds. Ava Johnson was still reeling, not from the fall or the bruises on her arms, but from the fact that Juno, the one creature who'd never failed her, was now caged like a criminal, and people were acting like she was too. The next morning, Ava sat at the kitchen table, staring at the half-eaten bowl of cereal. In front of her, her mother, Renee, paced in the kitchen, cordless phone tucked under her chin, speaking to a lawyer in clipped tones. "Yes, she's home. No, she hasn't been charged yet. No, we haven't seen the full report. I know. We're working on it." Click. Renee turned toward Ava, trying to soften her face. "Sweetheart, you need to tell me everything. What exactly did the officer say to you before Juno stepped in?" Ava looked away. Her voice was small. "He called me something, a name I'm not going to repeat." Renee's shoulders dropped. "Was it racist?" Ava nodded. "Did he touch you before Juno bit him?" "He pushed me down, that's when she reacted." Renee took a deep breath and sat across from her daughter. "You understand how this is going to look to them, right? They see a black girl, a big German shepherd, and a white officer in uniform. That's all they need to start twisting things." Ava nodded. "But we have the video." "We have a piece of it," Renee corrected. "Just enough to raise questions, not enough to prove what really happened." And what happened, Ava knew, wouldn't fit neatly into a press release or a police report, because Juno didn't bite out of fear or confusion. She bit with purpose. Meanwhile, at the city's animal control center, Juno sat in a cold metal kennel, her vest removed, her tags stripped. Officers walked by her with suspicion in their eyes. Some muttered under their breath. One tech even posted a photo on social media captioned, "Hero dog or ticking time bomb." But Juno just sat still, ears forward, tail flat, eyes locked on, the entrance like she was waiting for Ava, waiting for justice. At school, Ava walked down the hall like a ghost. Eyes followed her. Whispers chased her. Kids she'd known since kindergarten avoided eye contact. She overheard one boy say, "Didn't her dog attack a cop?" Another girl added, "Why would a dog do that unless it was trained to?" She wanted to scream, "Exactly, she was trained, by my dad, to protect people." But she kept walking, shoulders tight, heart sinking. The only person who said anything kind was her science teacher, Mr. Drew. "You okay, Ava?" he asked after class. She shrugged. "If you need space or time, you let me know. Some of us believe you." She gave him a small smile. Sometimes even a flicker of belief was enough to get you through the day. That night, Renee sat at her laptop for hours while Ava hovered nearby. "I found something," Renee said. "The department's official K9 manual. Your father helped write it. There's a clause about canine intervention in escalating force scenarios." Meaning? Meaning if the dog witnesses a handler or subject being violently assaulted, and they're trained in personal protection, they're legally allowed to engage. Juno might not be a certified officer, but she's registered as a defense-trained service animal. Ava perked up. So she didn't break the law? No, Renee said. She followed her training. The question is, will they recognize that? The next morning, Ava and Renee met with attorney Patrice Linwood, a sharp civil rights lawyer, with a soft southern drawl and a briefcase full of case law. This isn't about justifying a bite, she said, sitting across from them in her office. It's about context. This girl has a clean record. The dog has no history of aggression, and a witness video already contradicts the officer's statement. But here's the catch. She opened a folder. They're trying to classify Juno as a dangerous animal under city code. That's fast track for euthanasia. Ava's breath caught. Renee squeezed her hand. We won't let that happen, Patrice said firmly. But we're going to need more than a shaky phone video. We need the full picture. Meanwhile, the video kept circulating. It was picked up by a mid-size news blog, then a cable news show. Suddenly, Ava's face was on TV. So was Juno's. The clip went viral. Teen's dog attacks officer or saves her life. German Shepherd hero or threat. Canine instinct or dangerous behavior. Online, the comments were split. Some called for Juno's release. Others said the dog should be put down. But a few asked deeper questions. Why was the officer's body cam turned off? Why was a teenager being thrown to the ground in a quiet suburb? Why did the dog know something was wrong before the people did? Ava's brother, Malik, home from college after hearing the news, sat with her one night and said, Dad trained that dog with more ethics than half the cops in this city. Don't let them erase that. I'm scared, she admitted. So was he, Malik said. Every time he put on the badge. But he still did what was right. Ava looked down at the old K9 patch she kept in her pocket. She thought of Juno, behind metal bars alone, and her fear turned into something sharper. Determination. The next day, Patrice filed a motion for an emergency hearing to prevent Juno's euthanasia. In it, she included a sworn statement from Ava, a character report from her father's former K9 trainer, documentation of Juno's registered protection training, a request for the police department to release any nearby surveillance footage. The judge granted. The motion Juno would live, for now, and the case would be heard publicly. That same afternoon, a neighbor came forward with a critical detail. His dash cam, parked just across from the incident, had been running, and it captured everything. From the first step the officer took out of the car to the exact moment Ava hit the ground, and the moment Juno intervened. The footage was clear. Ava never resisted. The officer escalated without cause. Juno acted the moment Ava was assaulted. And the most damning part? Audio: the officer used a racial slur, twice. The footage made it to the press. The city issued a statement. We are reviewing all evidence in this matter with full transparency. But the internet didn't wait. Justice for Juno trended nationwide. Ava's inbox filled with messages from strangers, from activists, from families who'd been through the same thing, and the police department. They were silent. Until they weren't. 3 days later, the department announced that Officer Dempsey had been placed on unpaid leave pending investigation. Juno was released into Ava's custody. The story made national headlines, but for Ava, none of it felt like a win. Not yet. Because deep down she knew this wasn't just about her, or even just about Juno. It was about what people were willing to ignore, until a dog barked the truth loud enough to make them listen. For the first time, in over a week, Ava Johnson slept through the night. No nightmares, no jarring 3 a.m. phone calls, no waiting for the front door to open with news about Juno. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't feel like fear, but like peace. Juno was home. Not in a cage, not behind concrete, not at the mercy of someone who saw her as a threat. She was curled up on the rug in Ava's bedroom, head resting on her paws. Her big brown eyes tracking Ava's every move like she never left. Ava had expected her to act differently after everything. Skittish, defensive, changed, But she wasn't. Juno was still her dog, still the girl who would walk between Ava and traffic, still the one who would stand firm when someone raised their voice, still the one who'd followed Ava's dad from room to room for years before she became Ava's own protector. That morning, Ava pressed her forehead gently to Juno's and whispered, "I'm gonna fight for you. Like you fought for me." Juno wagged her tail once. Message received. Later that day, Ava and her mom sat in the offices of attorney Patrice Linwood. The downtown building was brighter than it looked from the outside. Tall windows, hardwood floors, an air of quiet resistance. That felt right, so what's next? Renee asked, arms crossed. Patrice leaned forward. "We make this case not just about what happened, but what it means." She tapped a stack of papers on her desk. "We've got dashcam footage. The body cam malfunction already smells like cover-up. Ava's account is consistent. The witness video supports her. The audio confirms a racial slur. And the department's response? Delay, deflect, deny. So we sue?" Renee said. "We start with a civil complaint. File a lawsuit against the department and Officer Dempsey for unlawful use of force, violation of civil rights, and false reporting. And yes, we also demand that the internal affairs findings be made public." Ava looked up. "What about Juno?" "She's key," Patrice replied. "The moment she acted is the exact second the law stopped protecting that officer and started protecting you. But I want to be very clear. This won't be easy. They're going to fight back. They'll try to flip the narrative." Renee nodded. "Let them try." That week, Ava went back to school. But this time, things felt different. Not better, just louder. Some students welcomed her back with hugs, others with silence. A few still whispered, unsure if she was a troublemaker or a hero. But Ava didn't care anymore. She wasn't walking those halls alone. Not emotionally, not legally, and definitely not publicly. A group of students had started a petition titled "Justice for Juno and Ava." It gained over 20,000 signatures in 2 days. Her old science teacher, Mr. Drew, pulled her aside and handed her a folder. "I've got a feeling this may come in handy," he said. Inside was a report he'd written detailing Ava's quiet leadership, her academic record, and her history of volunteering with the school's peer mentoring program. Character they would need to prove it. Meanwhile, the city began its slow shuffle toward accountability. The police chief, clearly under pressure, held a brief press conference. "We are committed to full transparency," he said without making eye contact with the cameras. "The internal investigation is ongoing. The officer in question remains on leave. No apology, no ownership." But Ava didn't expect one. She had something better. The truth. And the truth had legs. Local media outlets ramped up coverage. And then came the interview request that changed everything. A national news program, America This Week, wanted Ava and Renee to appear for a primetime segment. They hesitated. The exposure could be risky. Ava was still a minor, and people online were already debating everything from Juno's breed to Ava's hoodie on the day of the incident. But in the end, Ava said yes. "I don't want people to just see a headline. I want them to see me." The interview aired on a Thursday night. The segment was raw, emotional, and real. Ava didn't cry. She didn't rage. She simply told the truth. "I was scared. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I didn't know how far he'd go. And when he pushed me, Juno didn't just react. She remembered what my dad taught her, to protect the person who couldn't fight back." The footage played again. The clip of her being shoved. The bite. The silence that followed. Then Ava said something that would ripple far beyond the broadcast. "Juno didn't attack a badge. She stopped a man from hurting a kid. If that's a crime, then we need to rethink who we're calling dangerous." The internet exploded. Ava and Juno trended for 48 hours. Celebrities reposted the interview. A well-known animal rights group called Juno a canine hero, and offered to sponsor her training certification at a national level. And the city? They blinked. A new press release came out. We are reopening our review of Officer Dempsey's prior use of force complaints. There had been 5. All had been internally dismissed. Until now. Back at home, Ava sat at the kitchen table again. This time it wasn't serial. It was the rough draft of her testimony for court. She stared at the page, then at Juno, who lay at her feet. "I'm not writing this for them," she said aloud. "I'm writing it for every kid who didn't get their dog back." 3 weeks later, Ava walked into a courtroom that smelled like old paper and nerves. Juno couldn't be inside with her, but Patrice made sure she was waiting just outside. Inside, Ava took the stand. She looked the judge in the eye, and she spoke. Not with tears, not with anger, with truth. "My dad trained Juno to respond to threats, not to bite first, not to fight, just to protect. That's what she did. She protected me when no one else was going to." And in that moment, Ava didn't just reclaim her voice. She gave one to everyone who'd ever been silenced by a uniform. The judge didn't issue a verdict that day, but something shifted. In the hallway afterward, a quiet woman in her 60s, white hair, soft hands, approached Ava. "My granddaughter's in a wheelchair," she said. "She has a golden retriever who goes everywhere with her. I saw your story. I just want to say thank you." Ava smiled, shook her hand and whispered, "Juno would have protected her too." That night, as they drove home, Ava rolled down the window and let the wind rush past her face. Renee glanced over. "You okay?" "I think so," Ava said. Then she looked down at Juno, sitting proud in the back seat, head up, eyes alert. "She didn't just save me, Mom. She made them look." The world didn't stop after the courtroom, but it did start to pay attention. 3 days after Ava testified, she came home from school to find 3 letters waiting for her in the mail. One was from an animal rights organization in Oregon. Another was from a middle school class in Kentucky that had watched her America This Week interview as part of a civics lesson. The third was handwritten, in shaky cursive, from a 74-year-old Vietnam veteran in Arizona. Each letter said the same thing in a different way. "You reminded me what bravery looks like." Ava hadn't planned to become brave. She hadn't signed up for press conferences, courtrooms, or hashtags. She just wanted her dog back. But Juno's bite had opened something wider than she could have imagined, and now there was no going back. At school, things felt lighter. Kids who once avoided her now gave quick nods. Some even asked about Juno. Teachers treated her with more respect, not out of pity, but recognition. Mr. Drew posted her photo on the class bulletin board next to the words, "Real World. Heroes. Local edition." But Ava didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired. Still, she kept showing up, one foot in front of the other, one truth at a time. At home, Juno had become something of a celebrity. When Ava and her mom walked her through the park, people would stop, hesitant at first, then curious. "Is that the dog? She looks so calm. Can we pet her?" Ava always answered politely but never let strangers touch her. "She's still in recovery," she'd say, "and she's still mine." One afternoon, a man in his early 30s approached. Tall, broad-shouldered, soft voice. "I'm a former handler," he said. "Marine Corps. That dog, she didn't attack, she assessed. That distinction matters." Ava nodded. "It matters to me too." Meanwhile, the lawsuit moved forward. Patrice Linwood filed a formal discovery request into Officer Dempsey's personnel record. After weeks of resistance, the department finally produced documents, heavily redacted. But one report stood out, a 2019 complaint by a black teen alleging excessive force and verbal harassment. No video, no witnesses. The claim had been dismissed as unfounded. But now, with Ava's case gaining traction, the department couldn't sweep this one under the rug. The media circled back. The Washington Standard ran a headline, "Pattern of Force? Canine incident leads to new look at old complaints." That's when things got personal. Late one evening, Ava's mom came out to find their mailbox open and a note left inside. No signature, just 5 words scrawled in Sharpie. Keep your dog on leash. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. Renee called the police. They took a report but offered no real protection. Probably just a punk kid, the officer mumbled before leaving. Ava knew better. You think it was someone from the department? Renee asked. Ava shrugged. Could be. Or someone who hates what we represent now. And what's that? Ava thought for a moment, then said, a crack in the silence. 2 weeks later, the city council invited Ava and her legal team to a closed hearing regarding proposed reforms to animal intervention policy and officer body cam requirements. Was meant to be procedural. It turned into a turning point. Ava sat across from 7 council members, each with their own agenda, tone, and facial expression. Patrice made the legal argument. Ava made the human one. I'm not here to take down your police force, she said. I'm here because I was a scared kid walking home with my dog, and the person who was supposed to protect me made me feel like a criminal. Juno did what he didn't. She stopped it. She paused. I'm asking you to pass policy that makes sure the next kid doesn't have to rely on a dog to stop violence. The room was silent. Then one councilwoman, Latina, maybe late 50s, leaned in and said, that may be the most honest thing I've heard in this chamber all year. The policy reforms passed 2 weeks later. Mandatory body cam activation before engagement. Presumption of self-defense for registered K9 certified emotional support animals. Additional bias training for all patrol officers. The vote was 5-2. But, for Ava, it was unanimous where it mattered. Around the same time, Ava was invited to speak at a local college's student-run justice forum. She stood behind a wooden podium in a packed lecture hall wearing jeans and her father's old navy blue hoodie. She read from a short speech she'd written in her notebook. People asked me what Juno meant to do that day, like she was supposed to follow a rule book. But dogs don't have politics, they don't know uniforms or titles, they know intention, they know fear, they know love. She looked up. I didn't know I was going to get shoved. But she did. And she stepped in when no one else did. The room erupted in applause. Ava walked off stage to a standing ovation. That weekend, she and Juno sat on the back porch watching the sun melt behind the trees. Do you know what you did? Ava asked softly, scratching behind Juno's ears. You didn't just bite a cop, you made people care. Juno laid her head in Ava's lap, and that was enough. But not everyone was cheering. Online, new attacks surfaced. Fake accounts claimed Ava staged the whole thing. That Juno was trained to attack police, that her father was dishonorably discharged and he wasn't, that Ava was a race-baiting teenager. Renee tried to shield her from it, but Ava read the comments anyway, and each time she'd whisper one thing to herself. The truth doesn't need to shout to be real. Then came the subpoena. Officer Dempsey was being formally investigated, not just for Ava's case but for previous misconduct. He refused to testify, took early retirement instead. Pension intact. No charges filed. Ava watched the news coverage. With a blank stare, he gets to walk away, she said. Patrice sat beside her. He doesn't get to forget, and neither will anyone else. By summer, Ava had become more than a story. She was a symbol. Not perfect, not polished. Just human and honest. She and her mom launched a nonprofit called Juno Justice, focused on promoting protective animal rights, legal defense for families facing misuse of force, and emotional support advocacy for students of color. The first donation came from a retired police dog handler. The second came from a teenage girl in Chicago who sent in $3 and a note that read, "Because I have a dog who loves me too." That night, Ava sat by her window, journal open, stars overhead. She wrote, "She didn't speak, but she was louder than anyone else that day, and because she barked, I was heard." By the time Ava Johnson walked into the city's Youth Justice Summit that July, she wasn't just a girl who had been shoved by a cop. She was the keynote speaker, and her dog Juno, who sat calmly by her side with a blue vest that read, "Emotional support, certified K-9 protection, was now more recognized than most local politicians. Neither of them had asked for this spotlight. But after everything they'd been through, Ava understood one thing clearly now. You don't choose when the world watches you. You only choose what you do with it. The room was filled with high schoolers, educators, legal advocates, and community organizers. Most of them had followed her story on social media. Some wore Justice for Juno buttons. A few had brought their own dogs wearing support vests. Ava stood behind the mic and took a breath. Juno sat at her feet, as she always did. When this all started, Ava began. I was just trying to get home. I wasn't trying to start a fight or prove anything. I just wanted to walk my dog and finish my math homework. The crowd chuckled lightly, but their eyes stayed locked on her. And then one moment happened that changed everything, not just for me, but for a lot of people who saw their own stories in mine. That's when I realized this wasn't just about what happened that day. It's about what we're all expected to accept, and what we refuse to stay silent about. She paused, then added, "My dog didn't save me because she was trained to. She saved me because she loved me. But her training made it possible for the world to see that love as protection, not aggression." Applause. Long and heartfelt. She stepped down, and someone whispered as she passed, "You're not just speaking for you anymore." And she knew they were right. Later that week, Ava was invited to Washington, D.C., by a national animal welfare nonprofit that had chosen her as a youth ambassador. She and Renee boarded a plane for the first time in years. Juno traveled with them, tucked near Ava's feet, calm as ever. In D.C., Ava met with legislators, toured the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and sat down for a private conversation with a senator who told her, "Your case has made its way into committee talks." Ava blinked. My case? Like, for real laws? The senator smiled. Laws don't change because of headlines. They change because of hearts, and you've changed more than a few. Back home, Ava's nonprofit, Juno Justice, had started offering free virtual workshops for families on how to train and register protection-trained emotional support dogs, especially in communities where police interactions were statistically more likely to escalate. Ava helped design the program materials herself, basic terms in plain English, illustrations, a Know Your Rights flyer for students with certified dogs. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. Every family they helped felt like one less tragedy waiting to happen. One afternoon, Ava received an email from someone unexpected. "Hi, Ava. My name is Heather. I'm the daughter of Officer Dempsey. I saw your speech. I want you to know I believe you. My dad was never the man he pretended to be in uniform. I'm sorry for what he did. If you ever want to talk, I'd like to listen." Ava stared at the message for a long time. Then she replied, "Thank you. I don't hate your dad. I just wish someone had held him accountable sooner. That day could have gone a lot worse. I'm grateful it didn't. But it wasn't because of your dad. It was because of my dog." They exchanged messages for weeks. They never became close. But something about the connection felt important, like not all fences were meant to stay up forever. One evening, Juno stopped eating. Not entirely, just slowed down. Became pickier. Her eyes dulled slightly, and her walk shortened. At first, Ava thought it was stress or the heat, but a visit to the vet revealed early-stage joint degeneration, common in older shepherds with high-drive training backgrounds. "She's okay," the vet reassured her, "but her workday should be winding down." The word stung. Ava nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Juno had never just been a working dog. She was the reason Ava was still here, still walking, still speaking, still heard. That night, Ava curled up beside her on the rug and whispered, "You can rest soon, girl. You've earned it." In early August, Ava's school district invited her to speak at their annual Teacher in Service. She was just 15, standing in front of 200 educators. Her talk wasn't just about her experience. It was about how to recognize students who are in silent distress, and how to respect the presence of working animals in educational spaces. She ended with, "Sometimes the strongest voice in the room isn't the one speaking. It's the one standing between a child and their fear." That line made it into the district's training manual, permanently. Juno's story was adapted into a children's picture book by a local author. Ava approved the manuscript, helped edit the pages, and even read the audiobook version herself. The title? Juno Jumped First. It was released to local schools and libraries, with all proceeds going to Ava's nonprofit. Kids everywhere began writing fan letters to Juno the Brave. And Ava read every single one. In the fall, a bronze plaque was placed in the city park where it had all started, under the old sycamore tree near Oak Ridge and Elm. It read, "In honor of Juno the K9, who stood when no one else would, may we all be brave." Enough to bite when silence is injustice. At the unveiling, Ava didn't speak. She just knelt beside the plaque, pressed her hand to the cool metal, and let Juno sit beside her in the shade, eyes soft, tail still, heart forever loyal. That night, Renee found Ava in her room, staring out the window. "You okay, baby?" Ava nodded slowly. "I'm just thinking about..." "What?" She turned and smiled. "About how one bark changed everything." 3 years later, no one called Ava Johnson that girl with the dog anymore. Now she was Ava Johnson, founder of the Juno Justice Foundation, speaker at over 50 community events, author of What My Dog Knew That Day, and one of the youngest recipients of the National Youth Civil Courage Award. But even as cameras flashed and interviews piled up, Ava never let herself forget where it started. It didn't begin on a stage. It began on the sidewalk, with concrete against her back, a badge pressed against her arm, and a dog that decided enough was enough. Juno was older now. Her gait was slower, her fur lighter around the snout. She still followed Ava everywhere, but she didn't leap at sounds or track every movement with intensity. She had become what Ava's mom liked to call an old soul finally at peace. On quiet afternoons, Ava would sit beside her on the porch, gently brushing her coat, humming old songs her dad used to play on the record player. One day, while watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes past the fence, Ava asked aloud, "Do you think they'll remember what you did?" Juno's tail thumped once, as if to say, "You did the remembering for both of us." In her final year of high school, Ava turned her senior capstone project into a community action campaign, K9 Companions for Justice. The goal? Help children in at-risk communities get access to properly trained, temperament-tested dogs, not just for emotional support, but for real-time protection and confidence building. They trained 20 dogs in the first year. One of the graduates, a golden lab named Maple, saved a 7-year-old boy from a home invasion 2 months later. News stations called it a miracle. Ava just called it proof. The city never truly apologized. But it did change. The officer involved in her case moved out of state after his pension quietly expired. Several more complaints that had been dismissed in years past were reopened, and 2 more officers were dismissed for misconduct. Body cam legislation. Ava had spoken about during her summit tour passed in 3 neighboring counties, one ripple at a time. Juno passed away on a Sunday morning. She was 13. Ava had just started college, community college close to home, and was getting ready to leave for her first midterm when Juno didn't come to the door like she always did. Ava found her in her favorite spot under the dining room table, paws tucked in, eyes closed, as if resting. There was no pain, no struggle, just silence and stillness. The kind only left behind by something pure. They buried her under the sycamore tree where everything started. Ava placed her old leash, her service vest, and a framed photo of the 2 of them on top of the small wooden box. A group of friends, mentors, and neighbors gathered. Even a few strangers who had followed her story online flew in for the service. Renee read a poem. Ava didn't speak until the end. When she did, her voice was low but steady. She didn't have a voice of her own, she said, so she used her actions to speak. She told the truth louder than I ever could have. And now, She's not just my dog. She's everyone's reminder that love doesn't watch something wrong and do nothing. In the following months, Ava launched a national essay contest for middle schoolers called My Animal, My Shield. Over 200 entries came in. Stories of brave cats, therapy bunnies, even a parrot that screamed when a stove caught fire. But one entry stood out. A girl named Jayla wrote, "My dog didn't bite anyone, but she always stands between me and the yelling. She's the only one who's never made me feel unsafe." And I think sometimes that's what protection really is. Ava framed that entry and put it in her office. 1 year later, Netflix reached out about producing a documentary. Ava hesitated at first. She didn't want her story dramatized or twisted into something it wasn't, but the director assured her, "We're not telling your story. We're telling hers." The Canine Who Chose Justice premiered the following fall. It broke streaming records in its first weekend. People around the country wrote letters to local officials demanding more protection rights for service animals. A few sent pictures of their own dogs with tags that read WWJD, "What would Juno do?" Now 18. Ava stood at the edge of a small stage in Atlanta, dressed simply in jeans, sneakers, and a t-shirt that read, "Bark Back." The audience was filled with students, teachers, police trainers, and community advocates. She didn't need to prepare a speech anymore. She just told the truth. Juno didn't fight because she was angry. She fought because she saw something wrong and didn't wait for permission to fix it. That's not just a canine instinct, that's a moral one. And I think we all have it. She smiled softly. She just had better timing. As the applause faded, Ava walked outside to the sidewalk. A young boy stood waiting with a shy look and a trembling hand holding a leash. At the end of it, a stocky little pit bull wagged its tail excitedly. "Her name's Lucky," the boy said. "She's scared of loud noises, but she sleeps by my door." Ava knelt beside him. "She sounds brave," Ava said. The boy nodded. "She would never let anybody hurt me." Ava smiled. "I believe you." Later that night, Ava wrote in her journal, just like she always did after every event. She scribbled 5 words at the bottom of the page, "I carry her with me." Then she shut the book, turned off the light, and drifted off, dreaming once again of a bark that had changed the world. Thank you for following the story of Ava and Juno. Some stories are made up. Others are inspired by real lives, real choices, and the animals who walk beside us through it all. If this story moved you, challenged you, or made you think differently about what protection really means, then we ask you, if the moment came, would you have the courage to stand between the innocent and the unjust? Or better yet, would your dog? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more powerful stories just like this one.